All right, everybody, I think you know the drill at this point. Hey, everybody, what kind of color should I make the background lighting in this video? I'd really like to know your opinion. Purple? I like your style. Okay, admittedly, I might have a problem with this one because I don't know the difference between purple, violet, and lavender. Are they even all different, or are they all the same? I don't know. But this is what we have. All right. So, chapter 1160. There was a lot of crazy stuff in chapter 1160, right? So let's go through all of that, okay? First of all, let's tackle the big one, the biggest thing of the entire chapter. Does Douglas Bullet show up? That's right, the Douglas Bullet from One Piece Stampede. I was going to say Film Stampede, but no. The One Piece movies go like Film Z, Film Gold, and then just Stampede, and then Film Red. I don't think it's called Film Stampede, but whatever. Does he show up? The man, the myth, the legend, the big, strong, tough guy that turns into a giant mechanical kaiju. No, he doesn't. He doesn't. So a lot of people are kind of waiting to see Bullet because Bullet in the movie, he doesn't have like a lot of backstory. A lot of the backstory is actually given through like a little pamphlet that you would get. He's essentially a diet version of Kaido. No, I'm sorry. That's giving him too much credit. A diet caffeine-free version of Kaido, raised as a super soldier on an island, and then he rebelled, and then blah, blah, blah. He was really good at his job, so good that they turned on him. Yeah, it's sort of the same exact story as Kaido, but like less interesting, okay? And so it was mentioned that he was on Roger's crew, and that he was super strong, but like Roger was always able to beat him no matter what, and he was given the title of the Demon Heir. And so that was kind of drumming up a lot of like intrigue for Stampede. Like, who is this guy? This guy that used to be on Roger's crew that was like the apprentice pirate, like not Shanks and Buggy though, like another apprentice pirate. Like, who was this guy, right? So Douglas Bullet in the movie was 45 years old, and he was in his like early 20s when he was on Roger's crew, all right? And this God Valley flashback takes place 38 years ago, so unless they change the timelines around, Douglas Bullet would only have been 7 years old during this flashback and would have still been on that one island fighting as like a super soldier, right? So I highly doubt we're going to see Bullet. If there was ever a time to see him, we would have actually have seen him during Odin's flashback, because that was more towards the end of Roger's journey, which is clearly when Bullet was supposed to be a member of the crew, was during like the last few years of traveling, okay? But we didn't see him there, and we don't see him here. Could he still show up at some point? Yeah, I guess. I mean, maybe he shows up at the Ed War, or maybe he was like, you know, not at the very end of Roger's journey, but not this far back either. Maybe he was around, like, if we ever see a flashback to like 30 years ago or 28 years ago, maybe we'll see Bullet, but I wouldn't really get excited. The person we see in the chapter is actually Rangram. I love that guy's name, Rangram, and he was drawn by Oda in the SBS. I don't think he has an official position on the crew. I don't think it was ever actually revealed that he has that, but it was a guy that looks very similar to Bullet. Maybe that's Oda's like nod to Douglas Bullet. Like, I'll make a character that's like a big muscly guy with similar hair. That's that, because I know a lot of people brought that up in that shot when Roger arrives at God Valley. It was like, oh my god, Douglas Bullet's in the background. So no. All right, next up, Dragon's Platoon. What was up with this? This was from a mistranslation, which was actually corrected later, and then the official obviously has it completely corrected. But when I was reviewing the chapter, I ended up with that one version that was like the uncorrected version, okay? So there was a line that was a little confusing. It was when Dragon said that his entire platoon had been executed, and he wanders into a field with a bunch of people with targets on their back that were part of the hunting contest that were all dead. And so I was a little confused by that. I was just like, what? You know, how does that, did they take all the Marines and then also throw them in cages with the targets and then make them part of the competition? This whole thing is so messed up. I don't doubt the world government would do that. It's just, it was a little confusing. So no, what that whole like scene was about was that Dragon had just met Shanks and Shamrock's mother, and she was like imploring him, please find my babies and please make sure they're raised by somebody with a warm heart. Make sure he doesn't get his hands on them, basically, right? And so Dragon leaves, she dies, he leaves to go try to save the kids, and he's like, I gotta make sure I can at least save 2 babies, right? But he stops and he begins to think, he's like, wait a minute, if I defy the celestial dragons, it's not just me that's at risk of death. They'll also behead and execute my entire platoon. And then we cut back to the ship where we learn that all of Dragon's platoon that originally arrived on the island with the trank guns to, like, you know, subdue everybody, they had already returned to the ship. So that whole scene was more about how Dragon's the only one left on the island of that original platoon of Marines. Everybody else is back. So if they find out that Dragon is, number one, still on that island defying orders, and number two, he's actually directly defying the Celestial Dragons and messing up their sick, twisted game, then not only is he going to be executed, but everybody's going to be executed. So that's kind of what Dragon was worried about at that moment. But then one of the Celestial Dragons is about to shoot Kuma, and then he has to shoot them instead, and it's just like, okay, well, you know, I'm already into this, I guess, and I already shot a Celestial Dragon in the back, so I'm already defying them, right? And so we see him later, you know, finding Shanks and Shamrock and hightailing it out of there, right? But that was just a correction on that one scene. It makes a lot more sense now that Dragon is trying to, like, he's not thinking about just himself, he's thinking about the other Marines in his platoon, right? Okay. So the next thing is about Gunko. So in the official, this title of God's Steel or God's Tool is referred to as the devoted blade of God, which sounds really cool. All right. Now, originally, I assumed this was some sort of high status position amongst the God's Knights, like the best of the God's Knights or something like that. However, the one Celestial Dragon that's referring to Godsteel says she's just the knighthood's pet. She's the devoted blade of God, and referring to Gunko, because the context is one of the Celestial Dragons back at Marijois was placing bets on who would win, like, the solo competition, like who would rack up the most points out of just the individual God's Knights, right? And he's betting on Gunko, and the guy that's like the bookie that's like taking the bets is just like, are you sure you want to bet on Gunko? I mean, I know she's strong and everything, but she's just the God's Knight's pet, essentially. So I am interpreting this rather than the first implication that God's Steel meant like high status. I'm referring to this more as like a lower status position. Like Gunko is like a page or like a squire amongst the God's Knights. Like she's not a full member of the God's Knights yet, but this is like her first chance at like making a big showing kind of deal, right? That's the way I'm at least referring to it. Also, the other member of the Manmeyers that might have been like Gunko's superior in the family was talking about how like, oh, we have you this year, Gunko, implying that she was never part of this. This is Gunko's first hunting contest that she was participating in. She already does have the arrow powers. We also know that Gunko, back 56 years ago when she was seen in the Room of Flowers when Rox went to go confront Emu, she looked essentially the same there. So you can honestly interpret this like two different ways, honestly. Like number one, she's either like a squire of the God's Knights, or two, when they say knighthood's pet, maybe referring to Emu? But like, why knighthood's pet and not like just like God's like chosen or something? Like, I guess God's chosen is sort of in there, devoted blade of God. It's just that I can read this in two different ways. The implication so far is it's been like almost 20 years since that interaction between Rox and Emu. Gunko was there dressed in like the robes, like she was like a nun or something like that, and she was like a devoted servant to Emu. And we see these servants still exist today. There are people that are not the Gorosei, not the God's Knights, that are just like dressed in the fancy robes that go and like, I don't know, relay information to Emu or tell them that like when their bath is ready, or like the Gorosei are waiting for you in the throne room, you know, that kind of shit, right? So we're not really sure about this, but in all of the different like time frames that Gunko shows up in, from 56 years ago to here at God Valley 38 years ago to the present, she never seems to age at all. So it was probably something that Emu has like given to her in terms of like a bonus power of like not aging, and maybe he does that with all of his servants. Maybe he does that with just these particular ones. The Gorosei also have this. They are like frozen in whatever age they were when they received the power. So most of them are old men, the youngest being Shepherd Jew Peter. He looks to be about maybe in his 40s or 50s. And then Garling aged perfectly normal too, just though even though he was a God's Knight, he was a young man here at God Valley. He aged to be about like late 70s, early 80s, and now he is a Gorosei. So he will probably cease aging from this point onward, okay? But Gunko has always had this ability, has always had this feature. Does it have something to do with the Op Fruit's Eternal Youth operation? Very possible. What do you feel about the idea of like Emu just having the cracked ability of like, I can just mimic any devil fruit power? Because I gotta be honest with you, in a world like One Piece that we've had like almost 30 years to build up all this back lore when it comes to the devil fruits and the power systems and everything, having a character that could just at the snap of their fingertips just like, I have the power of the Mera no Mi. Fire! I have the power of the Op Fruit. Room. I have the power of, you know, all these zone abilities at my fingertips, right? Having a character like that and written well would be like the god character of the entire world, right? And being able to do complicated techniques like the Eternal Youth operation, that would be wild. I don't know if we've seen enough to really show that that's the case, but we do know that there is a mechanism in the story, and Ivankov even mentioned it, right? That was something crazy when Oda was already like putting the theories into the manga, where when Sabo was relaying the information about Emu to Ivankov and Dragon, like, yeah, there was this person that was even lording over the Gorosei named Emu, and I have no idea who that is. And they're looking at a book, and they're just like, well, what it could have been Emu Nerona, a person way back in the day during the time of the original 20 families, but they would have been dead by now if there wasn't like already an Eternal Youth operation that existed. Maybe they used that. Now, Oda might have put that in there as sort of like a red herring, as sort of like, oh yeah, it was totally the Eternal Youth operation. Turns out it wasn't, but it could have been related, like somebody that has the master key for like every single devil fruit power. I don't know. But yeah, that's the whole thing. What do we think about the devoted blade of God, God's steel, God's tool, and this celestial dragon referring to Gunko as the knighthood's, pet, as if referring to like she's lower ranked than everybody else, but she was a servant of Emus, so maybe referring to pet in that context. I don't know, man. We have Blackbeard. We don't know that much yet, considering the fact that Blackbeard at this point is only 2 years old and really hasn't had much dialogue yet. The only time we really see Blackbeard in this chapter is that he is looking out over the crowd as the Davy Clan is on stage, and we assume his mother is like holding on to him to kind of like shield him as best as she can from like these hateful stares and all of the knives and axes and things that they're throwing at them. And so Blackbeard just looks out at the crowd and is just absolutely traumatized. A lot of people have said, oh, maybe that's the reason that Blackbeard cannot sleep, right? It kind of brings up the scene when Doflamingo was having his little flashback about his father and his brother and everything when they were all taken by the townsfolk and then basically, tied up and burned at the stake in front of their house, right? And then he woke up from like a nightmare of that. You know that Doflamingo probably doesn't sleep that well either, okay? Like that scene is he was like reading about Flevance and then he wakes up from this nightmare in like a cold sweat. He immediately grabs like a bottle of wine and just like the whole thing and then slams it on the floor, right? So he has trouble sleeping because of trauma. Blackbeard might also have that same trauma. It's funny because so many people were thinking about like, oh, maybe it's because he has the multiple souls. So while one soul sleeps, he stays awake, so he never sleeps. There's also the whole idea of, Luffy said, or maybe it was Usopp, back in the day, they say people don't fall asleep in snowy countries. So maybe Blackbeard is from a snowy country, right? When honestly, it just all comes down to trauma. That's all it is. There's nothing more complicated than that. It's not a devil fruit thing. It's not a hockey thing. It's not multiple souls. It's not born in a particular nation. Blackbeard is part of the Davy clan, but beside that, it has nothing to do with that. It's just sheer trauma from this event prevents him from sleeping. And how does that make sense, like, biologically? Like, how could you just function without sleep? It's One Piece. And Marco even mentioned that Blackbeard is, he's a little bit different from everybody else. Now, in that regard, like eating 2 devil fruits. Oh, wait a minute. You know what? I mean, this is kind of a simple explanation, but can we just go with the idea that if you're part of the Davy clan, you can eat more than 1 devil fruit? Because Davy was, like, maybe one of the progenitors of devil fruits, because Davy is referred to sometimes as, like, like a devil. He's referred to as, like, this infamous pirate from way back in the day. Maybe that's the reason, because all the other members of the Davy clan that we know about are Rocks, and we don't even know what devil fruit Rocks has, if he even does have one. His sword might have one, or he might have one that he can extend the power to his sword. That would be common too. Like, Whitebeard uses his Gura Gura no Mi in conjunction with both his physical body, like his fists, but he can also add the Quake Bubble to his Bicento. So that's not, like, unusual. Like, the devil fruit could be in the power of the sword, or it could be himself, but he could have another power too that we don't know about. Interesting. Or he could be combining 2 powers together to make his unique swordsmanship, right? And then Blackbeard, we know, has the Gura Gura no Mi and the Yami Yami no Mi. And the only other members of the Davy clan that are 100% confirmed, because we could go into, like, oh, Luffy and Dragon and Garp are part of the Davy clan. Saul's part of the Davy clan. Robin is part of the Davy clan. Maybe Chopper is part of the Davy clan. You know what I mean? So, like, what if, like, the only members of the Davy clan we've met so far, getting away from that, we don't know any other members yet. We have Blackbeard, we have Rox D. Zebek, who's actually Davy D. Zebek, and then we have the other members of the clan that are on the stage. Now, I don't know if there's a way to determine if somebody is a member of the Davy clan, or this is just like witch hunt hysteria kind of thing, where we know that Rox D. Zebek is from God Valley originally, so it would make sense there were other members of the Davy clan hiding out there, okay? We don't know if Blackbeard's mom, Rox's wife, is a member of the Davy clan. She could be, it's possible, or she could just be, roped into this whole thing, right? Like, they find Blackbeard, they find some other members of the Davy clan, and because Blackbeard's mother's also there, they're going to bring her on stage, too, and throw her into the competition as well, as one of the super rare rabbits, okay? So, like, regardless, it's the same situation with Kuma's mom. Like, it doesn't matter that she wasn't a Buccaneer. She was still arrested along with Clap and Kuma as well. Because the government just doesn't take any chances with that, I guess, right? So not everybody up on stage could be a member of the Davy clan. Some of them are much larger, which could indicate they are also Buccaneers. It was kind of implied in the chapter that you can be a member of the Davy clan and be a Buccaneer. They are not, though, mutually exclusive. It's not like you have to be one and the other, okay? You could be a Davy clan member and not be a Buccaneer, but you can be as well, okay? That's kind of the idea. So maybe there were some other Buccaneers there, and then Kuma was just from a different island. He was from the Sorbet Kingdom in the South Blue, but maybe his family does originate from God Valley at some point. It really is the Island of Destiny. It all links back at one point. You know what I'm saying? It could just be trauma, and that's the reason why he doesn't fall asleep, and it also could just be the reason why, members of the Davy clan are the one exception. Maybe that's why, you know what? Honestly, it's such a simple explanation. I can't believe I didn't think of it earlier when we found out about the Davy clan, but really, that could just make it make sense. Because the idea that if you eat more than 1 devil fruit, you explode, right? So Vegapunk has apparently run tests on this, and those are the results he came up with, and then he published those results, and, like, Cypherpool 9 and, like, Spondum and everybody knew about those results. And we also know that Saturn was kind of looming over Vegapunk. He was a scientist as well in his spare time, so he knew as well. So it's possible Vegapunk could have, like, fudged the numbers on that, like, oh yes, Quasar, if you eat more than 1 devil fruit, you explode. I've tested it so many times, you don't need to check. I don't know if that's the case. Maybe Saturn would have been like, I'm going to make sure the numbers are accurate on this, right? So I'm going to assume that, for the vast majority of people, you eat more than 1 devil fruit, you die. But if you're a part of the Davy clan, or maybe there's other exceptions too, maybe if you're part of the Buccaneers as well, Or if you're a descendant from Joy Boy. Maybe there's a few clans in the world that do have the ability to eat more than one devil fruit, and they can survive, and they do get multiple powers, and that's why the government wanted to make absolutely sure to eradicate them, or maybe one of the reasons to eradicate them. For everybody else in the world, one person, one power, that's it, hard rule. But for a few, you can have 2 powers, maybe even 3 powers. Who says 2 is the limit? Maybe 3 or 4. And then the government's like, we can't have people walking around with like 5 different devil fruit abilities all into one, because maybe then you could start getting combinations that can maybe challenge Emu and the Gorosei. And so that's why Emu wanted to shut that down. Emu might be a member of the Davy Clan. Woo! Well, that'd be weird. Emu's a member of the Davy Clan, and Emu's the only one that's allowed to have more than one devil fruit ability. Everybody else can't have them. Maybe not every single devil fruit in the story, but maybe, like, we're just turning Emu into All for One from My Hero Academia now. Maybe not necessarily on that level where Emu has access to, like, 100+ different devil fruit abilities, but if Emu just had, like, 7 or 8, like, I have 7 or 8 devil fruit abilities, and I'm like, I want to be the only person in the world that can have that power, but Blackbeard could also challenge my domain. Luffy could also challenge my domain. Dude, if Luffy just eats another devil fruit power, like at some point, like the snow fruit that was on the ship the whole time in Nami's Mekon trees, yeah, Luffy just eats that, and he just grabs all of Nami's trees, eats them, Nami yells at him, but then Luffy has a Logia now. Why not? Why not? Right? Like, okay. I don't know. But that's something there. That's something there with the Davy Clan and with Blackbeard. That's pretty much everything I just wanted to say there. There's a couple of other things people wanted to bring up, that Blackbeard's mom looks like Olvia. Some people say that she looks like Nami. I did a video about that a few days ago, talking about like maybe Nami's homeland was also afflicted by one of these hunting contests, if they still do them. It was never mentioned they discontinued the contests after God Valley, so it's very possible they could keep going, right? She does kind of resemble Olvia, but I don't think that's like she's supposed to actually be Olvia. Olvia at this time was still alive. She's the same age as Dragon. Now, she died at Ohara when she was 33, I think, and at this point, same age as Dragon, she would have been 17. People have also brought up, like, maybe she's not, like in that scene, maybe that wasn't even Blackbeard's mom. It was just, like, another person that was, like, shielding Blackbeard. Like, we don't know for certain it was Blackbeard's mom, but I'm going to assume it was Blackbeard's mom, and also was not actually Olvia. I don't think Olvia was part of this. But, you know, there is a similarity, I guess, so I thought I would mention it. Anyway, thanks for watching, everybody. That's the video. Hope you all enjoyed. Next up, there's no chapter this week. It's a break. I'm actually going to do, I think, another one of the tournaments, the One Piece Grand Tournament. Dr. Kureha won the last one, and so this time we have Makino returning, and also Crocodile's giving it another shot. And I also rolled to get Marco for the thumbnail. So we have, at least right now, we have Crocodile, Marco, and Makino. Makino did a good showing in the last tournament. She might win it all this time for this Halloween-themed one. I've added some other features to it. So that'll probably be this week sometime, maybe even tomorrow or Thursday. I'll get that out. Thanks for watching, everybody. This will be Teching. Signing out. Later.